Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, President of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a podcast dedicated to individuals who are starting and building their successful bookkeeping, accounting, or tax business. It's here on the show that each and every week we have on guests, individuals that are experts in their right as it relates to things that matter to us as we're running our business. It could be topics ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, onboarding clients, retaining clients, training our staff, mental health, and so many more. It's here that we actually dive deep into those things that we need to be considering as we're running our businesses so that we can, in fact, offer quality accounting services and get paid what we're worth. Now, today, I happen to have someone that I'm excited to have on the show simply because I met him recently at a previous conference, but more importantly, at the conference, learned some wonderful things from him. It happens to be Randy Johnston. He happens to be the leading figure in technology for over 40 years, inducted into the Accounting Hall of Fame in 2011. He has actually remained a top thought leader, 25 top leader for that matter, for the last 14 years. That's what it is. Now, his continued influence in the profession is highlighted in his recognition in 2024 in the Accounting Today Top 100 Most Influential People in Accounting, his 21st consecutive year on that list. Now, in addition, Randy authors a monthly column and hosts a weekly podcast for the CPA Practice Advisors and contributes to the Journal of Accountancy. He writes a variety of articles and things related to technology, and with that has a number of books as well. He has founded and still owns multiple ventures, including K2 Enterprises, as well as the Network Management Group, NGM, or NMG rather. And for decades, he has actually provided services to CPA firms and has actually been the largest managed service provider for CPA professionals in North America. Now, Randy has his wife and 4 children and 7 grandchildren. Has that number changed at all, Randy?
Nope, that's accurate.
7 grandchildren, and he shares a passion for theater, music, travel, golf, skiing, snorkeling, and model trains. So, Randy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I'm very excited about is I know that you have a number of expertises, one of which happens to be technology. That's how I was first introduced to you. So I want to start with a background, just giving my listeners an understanding of what brought you to the accounting profession years and years ago. Why become an accountant?
So it is a long story based on my age, but I'm going to go quick. And I have been doing technology for over 50 years at this point. We actually started writing code in 1961.
Wow.
So I've done it for a while. And by the time I got into the 70s, I was assisting CPA firms with their technology. And by the time I got into the 80s, I was helping with some of the original design on local area network technology and deploying the first local area networks in CPA firms. That led to design of accounting software, practice management software, and many other platforms. So I have been a paid designer for most of the technology companies that you would recognize, except for Google, Facebook, and Salesforce. Don't do those 3. But pretty much everybody else, Intuit, Xero, Sage, all the way up to SAP and Oracle,
Nice.
as well as Microsoft. So I'm the original designer of the accounting format in Excel and the original designer of pivot tables in Excel. Of course, this is the 40th anniversary of Excel this year.
Yeah.
So, we were doing that 40 years ago, 30 years ago on the pivot table stuff. So I've been around technology pretty much the whole way, but have always focused on accounting related technologies since about 1983 or 84. And so you get to hang with a lot of really smart people that way. You get to learn from them and maybe contribute an idea that can help. That's what we're hoping to do today, too.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that also is very, very interesting is you are a fellow podcaster. You have actually a podcast that addresses the technologies that people are facing in the accounting profession. So I'm trusting that with that experience, the podcast, and so much more, we're going to have a great, insightful conversation today. So let's start with what you mentioned just a moment ago, tech stack. Clearly, the day has gone where the abacus is no longer needed. We're using software. We're on the cloud. We're doing things that really allow us to be efficient in our accounting. So what kind of tech stack advice would you have for an individual who's starting an accounting business? What should they start with? You mentioned the general ledger platforms of QuickBooks, Xero, Sage. What would you complement in addition to that?
Yeah, an insightful question. and I hope your listeners hear this one real carefully, because you really need to decide what you're going to deliver to your clients. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, what do you want the practice to be first? And that will determine the platform that you should choose. And once you choose your platform, then you're likely going to need add-ons to make everything work right.
Yes.
So for example, I believe that in a client accounting services or CAS practice, that you might have as many as 23 service offerings. Now, most of you should not offer 23. You should offer 1, 2, 3, or so that you're comfortable with first, because the banking industry long ago realized that if you have 3 services, it's very hard to switch to another bank. So they typically want to have 3 services in you, and a lot of you have a depository account, a credit card, and perhaps a loan. And
Mm-hmm.
those things really drive this environment of stickiness, if you will.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
now, besides being sticky, though, obviously you want to do things that are of high value. So that could be payroll, as an example. It could be financial reporting. It could be dashboarding and so forth. Now, again, I don't want to get too far off the beaten path yet on the specialties, but some platforms have everything you need wrapped up in the single platform. For example, the Accountant's World Accounting Power has GL, and it has the document management and bill pay. It has everything more or less inside the platform. Whereas if you're doing QuickBooks Online, for example, you might have a variety of products to pick from. I
Mm-hmm.
actually maintain a grid of that what I consider to be the top 4 products in each of those categories. So 4 times 23, you can figure out pretty quickly. That's a lot of products to keep track of. And that's only the ones that I consider the top 4. So I
Yeah.
have far more beyond that. Now, products that work in Intuit's QuickBooks system may or may not work in Xero's system, but I like to pick products that work in multiple systems so I'm not tied to a vendor.
Yeah.
And, clearly other vendors that compete here, the Zoho Books or Sage Intacct, or perhaps Aplos in the not-for-profit sector. Again, you have to know what you're trying to offer before you pick your platform. Because if you're trying to do not-for-profit accounting, you're way better off in Aplos or Sage Intacct than you are in QuickBooks or Xero to get the not-for-profit accounting correct.
One of the things I really appreciated about your starting this part of the conversation is knowing first what you're trying to offer. What are some of the services you're going to be providing? And with that, if you were going to niche your services into, for example, nonprofits, as you stated, it would then behoove you to get the better platforms to actually meet that demand of the client. Because you're just pointing out, if you're going to go that direction, there are better software platforms at a general ledger level that would actually be more conducive to providing that service. So knowing what you're going to be doing is very important. You also indicated there are 23 services. I speak of 3 core services, the bookkeeping, accounting, the tax planning and preparation, the CFO and advisory services. But you're right, it can go so much deeper than that as you get into dashboarding, forecasting, payroll, just a variety of additional services that one can offer. But it all circles back to this whole idea of the 3 things that you're offering to get that stickiness that we all want with our clients, because the name of the game in accounting is retention, getting clients and retaining them month after month after month so that we have that recurring revenue. So as it relates to tech stacks, is there a particular favorite that you really like that you feel is really helpful as it assists the accounting professional in providing those services?
I do have some favorites here, but I'm going to kind of leverage a little bit more of what you're saying, because
Okay.
one of the regrets I have in the career is actually allowing client accounting services, CAS, to be called that. I originated that term, and now I wish it was CAS with 2 A's, client accounting and advisory services. And at the time, I thought that was smarter because of SAS and all the other 4-letter as a service type things. But
Yes.
there was confusion about, well, is that client accounting as a service and so forth. Now, the reason I mention that is I actually prefer advisory services, and there's way too many people that are promoting fake advisory services.
Thank
So
you.
since one of your primary core services is CFO services, I usually break them up, Roger, in 3 levels.
Okay.
Core bookkeeping transaction, controllership and CFO services, different levels of services, is the way I usually look at it. Now, the reason I framed it all like that is if I'm really doing advisory first, then my preferred tools are going to be those in the advisory area. If I am doing CAS as my primary service, then I'm going to mention my CAS products first. Now, another rule of thumb that I've gotten, maybe two more, and then we'll go after the products. First, whoever is doing the client accounting services sees the opportunities first. You can tell when there's been too much expenditure on payroll or excessive inventory. You can see in the financials the issues.
Yes.
On the other hand, if you're doing advisory, I prefer advisory to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And so much of what is done with financial reporting tools is really reactive after the fact. That's not the deal. Just like your another one of your core planning or core services is tax planning. Well, we consider tax planning to be a secondary service in the advisory world. So I normally in advisory, I break up three different levels there: primary, secondary, and tertiary, or sometimes I refer to tertiary as concierge service, where we refer.
Yes.
But the core is always planning, personal planning, business planning, and so on. Now, that said, then, Roger, you can see that if I can get tools that are advisory centric, that's one thing. If I get tools that are CAS centric, that's another thing. So I'm going to start with a tool out of Dallas Fort Worth area called with the number 4 impact data, 4 impact data. Now that tool will automatically hook into QuickBooks Online. It'll do cash flow, and more importantly, it has multiple business models to help with an advisory perspective. Now, in my world, I only see a few advisory centric tools that you could use for financial reporting and use for advisory. There's not that many of them. 4 Impact Data basically automatically produces Power BI dashboards that are drillable to the transaction level.
Wow.
But it also uses historic models. So, for example, Roger, I was trained on the DuPont model
Oh, yes.
of business management as part of my IBM management training. DuPont is built into the system automatically, but there's also other very sophisticated business modeling inside there. So it's a trivial system to use. You basically connect the client's QBO file and it starts generating reports and makes AI-powered recommendations based on what's seen in the data. Far better than what we see with Intuit's Assist AI product. It's like night and day. It's child's play versus professional play.
Well, first of all, I appreciate these 3 levels that you were able to break it down into, because coincidentally, a lot of what you've said is exactly what we're taking to our clients and what we're telling the firms to consider doing as they're offering accounting services. Rather than bookkeeping, controller, CFO advisory type services, we speak of it as bookkeeping, accounting, and advisory services. And as we go through that, we have the same explanation as you were describing, because the accounting is more the analysis, where the advisory is more the forward thinking. So you described it phenomenally well. And that additional tool that you were providing there as a tech assist to help the advisor actually now do these things, to tie it into the DuPont model, one that I'm very familiar with, is a great way of actually now getting the resources you need to go to your client in that advisory capacity. So well said. Now, as for your tech stack, are there any other highlights that you would like to build on?
Well, there are, and I appreciate your clarity on those items too, Roger, because as I'm considering, buyers of these services often don't even know what to look for. So, like CFO is still out there, but it is very hard to leverage CFO services. Those, if you're really doing CFO, that becomes a lot tougher. So there are only a very few CFO-like tools that I've found around the world. VFD Pro out of UK is one of those, as an example. But I think fundamentals here are a lot more important to your listeners. And so I will just start with a management tool like Keeper.
Please. Okay. Yeah.
And when we think about workflow and management, one of the things that's tough for most practitioners that are trying to run these types of advisory and CAS practices is how to manage everything and how to get leverage with the employees. And in my world, I think there's 4 products that fit in this workflow management category. That'd be Keeper, Jetpack Workflow, Carbon, and Arrow Workflow are probably the 4 that are the best known in that area and probably do the best job. So those are certainly ones that I would pull in. On the other side, though, if you think about the issues of trying to get the documentation from the clients, the whole world of document management and document gathering and document extraction. So there's 3 categories there, which have quite a number of tools. But, a simple one that crosses multiple platforms is Smart Vault out of Houston.
Yeah.
And then there's other products out there like ScanWriter Plus or Ledger Docs or Box that you could use. But, on the document gathering, we like tools that actually will auto-nag or remind users that you haven't supplied the documentation needed. So portals like Liscio do that. Of course, the Dex Prepare product, which just was spun out of HG Capital, purchased by Iris here in December. That's all the same ownership group. But Dex Prepare, formerly known as Receipt Bank, has been around for 15 years at this point. New AI-powered features arriving here in 2025. Of course, in the Xero ecosystem, HubDoc, which used to work with both QuickBooks and Xero, still does, but not quite as well. And then others like Entrylist would be another example. But the document extraction tools today that I think are absolutely the best, or maybe the best document extraction tool, is makershub.ai. That tool will do line item extraction, allow you to classify a single transaction, breaking it up between multiple jobs and multiple cost centers. So if you have needs in, let's say, construction or healthcare or restaurants, most of the tools like Dex Prepare or HubDoc won't break that up enough for you, or BotKeeper. None of those will do that job, but makershub.ai does it. And notice you can almost tell by the name, it's another AI product. So there's several of these tools we'll talk about, Roger, that have AI really in them, not fake AI, kind of like our advisory versus fake advisory conversation.
Get your copy of Red to Black. It is the book written for accounting professionals to help businesses turn around and go from being in the red to being in the black. This book is written for consultants, business owners, operators, and managers, no matter what your client's product or service, or irrespective of your talent, skill, or expertise. As an accounting professional, you'll be able to use the principles presented in this book to actually become, for your clients, the profit and growth expert. Every chapter is filled with principles and concepts that you can use immediately with your clients to lead them from being in the red to being more profitable in their business, and see you as, in fact, their guide, their coach, with the expertise and wisdom that you can bring from this book. In the book, you have how-to guide explanations, you have models that you can follow, you're shown how to actually calculate and determine the fees for your services, the actual model that you'll use during the implementation of all this, and most importantly, the end-all results with your clients. Get this book now and see what it is you can do to offer this new revenue-producing service as, in fact, the profit and growth expert. For more information on how you can take advantage of this offer, go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today. Now, you've brought up AI. I want to go there, but before we do, I want to just kind of set this up, if I may, because the accounting profession has had an evolution, and we're both old enough, you're a little older than I am, to really see that evolution and have experienced it, because there was this whole talk a few decades ago of going paperless, and it obviously was this transition to going onto the cloud. And then from being on the cloud, we've got this now more accelerated transition of incorporating AI into the workflow. And you just brought that up. And so what I want to talk about is when first ChatGPT and the others came on the scene, it was, how do we become programmers and actually go in and utilize this? Because we could, through prompts, actually communicate with the AI and have this extraction of information so that we could maybe learn some insights as to what we should be doing. And what really was more impactful wasn't the actual opportunity to write prompts and maybe work with the AI itself, but rather is taking these platforms that we're already paying for and using, seeing them integrate within themselves the use of AI to actually further enhance what we're already paying for and using in these various tech stack tools that we're using. Would you agree that they are finding ways to build into the existing platforms the AI for us to then benefit further from what we're already paying for?
Yeah, so not unlike the three levels we talked about earlier, I really look at AI productivity in three levels. There's
Okay.
general productivity and the prompt engineering that you're talking about. So,
Yes.
I can teach people how to do prompt engineering against ChatGPT or Copilot 365 or Perplexity or Claude or Llama
Bard. Yes.
right? It
Yes.
just doesn't matter because the prompt engineering actually turns out to be similar, and we
Mhm.
actually encourage people to spend a bit of time in that area. However, the more productive thing is the AI that is getting incorporated directly into the products, because the vendors that are dealing with this know the types of things that the products have to do. They're leveraging the AI tools to do them faster, better, easier.
Mhm.
That's where I think For Impact Data and MakersHub.ai, for example, have done a very good job of that so far. Now, one of the next tricks, as you know, since you've been around AI a bit, is the general models like ChatGPT make stuff up out of whole
Mhm.
cloth. They
They
hallucinate,
hallucinate. There you
right?
go.
Right. And so when these products are hallucinating, the problem in the accounting world is we have to have accuracy. Well, nuts, because that means we can't really count on these AIs to always produce accurate results. In fact, in many cases, they don't do accounting accurately. So when you look at a product like Digits, who is doing financial reporting and trying to do some forecasting using AI, the accuracy is kind of that third level. Some vendors, Wolters Kluwer being a good example, Thomson Reuters a little less, have both claimed that one of the benefits of dealing with their platforms is they are guaranteeing accuracy with AI. And I did have the pleasure in late December of 24 to chat with the Wolters Kluwer head of AI. I've known him for a couple of 3 years. But you are right. We've been around AI for a long time. Just the history for your listeners there. AI was coined as a phrase in 1959 at Dartmouth by seven people. I know four of the seven. So again, like you said, I've been around a while, and I wrote my first AI in Lisp in 1975. So AI is not new, friends. AI, if you take 1975 to now, that's 50 bloody years ago, right? And so the tools have really evolved rapidly since about the 2010 neural engine developments. And, one minor call out for your listeners, Roger, is we are adamant now about all new laptops and desktops being bought with neural processing units in them, NPUs. All smartphones, iPhones, Androids, the new Samsungs that have just been introduced, and the Pixels all have neural processing units in them. And we believe that these AI models will run either on portable smartphones, if you will, or on computers or in the cloud. They run at three different levels.
Mhm.
And so the models will get more and more sophisticated. And if you've got neural processing units on your phones or computers, you'll actually get additional advantage. Now, we know Apple is really struggling with their Apple Intelligence on their phones and so forth. It's pretty clumsy technology. But we can get trial balances today to run off of neural processing units with products like Tally4 out of California. And you can literally take um, financials directly connected from QuickBooks, Xero, and so forth, pumping them into the trial balance in Tally4, do tax adjusting entries, and pump them the rest of the way into ProSystem Tax or Access Tax or UltraTax or GoSystem RS or Drake or, right on down the list, ProConnect and so on. So we see the benefit of the NPUs coming and the AI. So now take all this gobbledygook we just spewed for your listeners and simplify it. You can count on vendors to build AI into your systems, and it will become transparent to you.
Yes.
Just like today, you don't worry too much about how virtual private networks, VPNs, or SSL, secure socket layer, work in browsers. You just don't think about that. But in the 80s and 90s, we had to explain how those things worked. And once they got worked out, they became transparent. That's what I think is going to happen with AI. It's going to get worked out and become pretty transparent how to use it. And, there's going to be a lot of evolution that's going to be required to have accountability out of the AI. But I don't see the accountability being executed much here in the U.S. market, with the executive orders rescinding the AI restrictions here in 2025.
Yeah. No, your explanation is very helpful because I agree with you. One of the things that's very intimidating, I think, for a lot of individuals is this concept of I can interact with the AI, but I have to be a great prompt writer. The better my prompts, the better the results. Well, that's intimidating. It's a language. It's a skill that you have to acquire. Well, one of the things that's nice is we're discussing here that the fact that AI will be embedded or integrated naturally, seamlessly into the different interfaces that we're using, and we may not knowingly be using AI, but the prompts, the feedback, the interactions that we're having with the interfaces we're using are actually now incorporating the AI experience. And therefore, we're benefiting from it indirectly because we're not necessarily intentionally engaging with the AI. Now, the thing I want to do is to take this to a whole nother level. I know that you were recently at the CES conference in Vegas. And with that, I'm sure you saw some incredible things. I would personally love to go one of these years. But as it relates to accounting and perhaps this world that we live in, we've got things on the horizon that are fast approaching. And when I say fast, I would say within the next 5 years, things such as quantum computing now becoming not a thing that's only done at the IBM type level, but it's now going to be available for the average person. Where do you see some of these technological leaps coming into the main experience of accounting?
I appreciate that because we've attended CES for a long time. My co-podcaster, Brian Tankersley, who's a CPA out of Knoxville, this was his 15th time, but I have attended technology shows since about the 1980s with the Comdex and the successor shows. Mm-hmm. Now, AI was big headline, but I'm going to, and by the way, I've recommended people go to CES because it is a place to see new technologies, often 1 to 2 and sometimes 3 years before they actually become viable products. Mm-hmm. But you also have to know that only about 10% of the products shown actually make it to market. Yeah. Many of them are just there as prototypes. Well, that said, there was a lot of buzz around AI this year, but I would comment that the show suffered from lack of investment in 2024. And so I believe that, I surmise there may be 5 or 6 reasons why that happened the way it did. But fundamentally, just not enough investment was going on to get viable products packaged up as AI. It was more of a marketing buzz type of approach. Now, that said, the AI products related to accounting shown at CES this year, there were some. And those products had, subtle, I think, things that I would say in them. And I'll just pick on a very straightforward product from Ricoh. Many of you would probably know them better as Fujitsu, the scanner company. Mm-hmm. Ricoh put out a competitor to the OWL camera called the Meeting 360. Now, this thing has AI in it, sensing the video images in a meeting table, conference room type of approach. Okay. And it adjusts automatically to the speaker to focus on the speaker and the prior two. So you get kind of a whole room view and 3 different person view. And then the technology for the sound is AI tuned. Now, in effect, the thing could have been done with machine learning, but they recognized there were some oddities, which is why they leveraged the AI. So that's one, pretty minor example of how that was done. But for another, Today I'm on a noise canceling headphone, one that I like very much, a Poly Blackwire, but discovered a new AI-based noise canceling headphone from Alphonia that had superb clarity in an exceptionally noisy environment. Now, probably the best way for your listeners to picture this, think about a basketball arena or a football stadium and trying to have a conversation. My belief is this headphone would work in that situation, filtering out all the background noise and allow you to whisper and be able to be heard. And
Wow.
likewise, you could hear. The headphone was just absolutely stunning. And the guy that is representing the product lives in Colorado Springs here in the States. So, that's just an example. But we also saw a lot of the meeting room technologies. We followed products like the Samsung DeX environment, which allows use of all of the popular operating systems, Windows, iOS, Android, Mac, Linux, and allows you to use tablets, phones, or computers and seamlessly interact. And they really stepped up their game again with the AI capabilities inside those products. So, but probably a little closer to home for our bookkeeping and accounting audience.
Mm-hmm.
They stepping back to the RICO folks, they had actually done a better job on their document extraction. That's probably the key one that I would say that I said, okay, this is clear that the AI piece used in here is better. And then if you go to the big manufacturers, the HPs, the Dells, the Lenovo's, who all had a presence, you could see where their products were headed, but nothing that I'd call breakthrough that wasn't already known before the event.
So I want to take what you've just described here, some of the technologies that are going on. What excites you in the accounting space in the foreseeable future? How do you see that the industry is going to change as what this technology affords our clients, what it affords us as accounting firms? What's exciting to you on the horizon?
Well, there is a product that is in beta right now that is clearly a breakthrough technology in my mind called Basis. And Basis is superior to the capabilities we can get with the workflow products like Keeper today. It increases productivity on reconciliation, financial reports, statement generation by about 5-fold on QuickBooks and about 10-fold on Sage Intacct. Now, what it's doing is it's using AI to optimize, various steps in the process. They also have a pretty good vision of the way they'll deliver and implement their financials and all that. In the firms that I have it running in, it is a clear game changer in terms of firm management. They've got a really big appetite for the things they want to do. So I've cautioned them not to try to do too much, do a few things very, very well. But, my own history says you can do multiple things and, it's just more interesting. And they have a vision that could make them the platform of management choice for a typical client accounting services operation. Now that you don't hear me say things like that very often, Roger, because I'm usually pretty conservative about what I believe can be done. Now, the accounting software vendors, many of them are resting on their laurels. Most of this stuff that we're looking at is, 1996, 7, 8 designs and haven't really evolved very much. But I think we're going to see some more things in the basis area that will help us there. So that would be one example of something that I'd say, that's pretty doggone exciting. Okay.
Good.
So there's probably a few more. When it comes to rapid close type of operations, there's so many of these little tools that just do one little thing.
Mm-hmm.
And an admonition that I had for most people trying to run a practice is less tools is better. more is superior. In other words, probably about 2019, I started getting on the mantra of, you're trying to pick new products to solve problems. That's like getting a splinter in your finger and putting a Band-Aid on it, and getting a splinter in another finger and putting a Band-Aid on it. And you're far better off taking the Band-Aids off, getting the splinters out, and putting on a pair of gloves. And one pair of gloves is better than, 10 splinters with Band-Aids.
Yeah.
See, unfortunately, to really run an Intuit QuickBooks Online CAS practice, you probably need way too many add-ons. Even with the new Intuit Enterprise product, which is, I've looked at it enough to know I'm pseudo impressed, but not really when I compare it to the mid-market products, because at its price point, you're about as well off running Sage Intacct or Dynamics 365 or, heaven forbid, NetSuite, for client accounting services.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make fiscal sense to most.
One of the things that you said that I'd like to just draw attention to is the fact that there are so many of these tools, so many of these bells and whistles that we could be utilizing in our firm. And the best advice I could give is fewer is better, less is more. But the big thing I would add to that is the fact that I think what we tend to do is we tend to roll into our service offerings tools that we don't really go deep into, which is to say that we don't really become experts in those tools and don't fully leverage them as they could be. So yeah, we're paying the fees, we're implementing it, we're trying to use it, but it's at a surface level that really, if we just took a little bit more time and spent a few more days doing some training, getting into the nuances of what the capabilities truly are, we could fully utilize what we're already paying for and really, I think, get a bigger bang for the buck, both in not only what we're trying to provide, but for our clients' experience. So I would say less is more, go deep, go really into what you're already paying for and see what you can do to fully leverage that platform. So that would be my addition to that.
Yeah, and I will give you one more addition to what you just said, because I do agree with that position, but and I don't want analysis paralysis, but we find way too many vendors are promoting very good sales pitches and people are falling for them. And the best thing you can do is actually be very thoughtful before you even select a platform. So if I can get you to select the right platform first and then train deep, that is actually even better, because we find that, maybe you're trying to solve 2 or 3 or 4 needs and you wind up getting 2 or 3 or 4 products where one product would have done it all and might have been less expensive than 2 or 3 or 4 products.
Yeah, what I do when I have this same conversation with someone is we talk about the shiny object syndrome. It's the fact that you've got a great sales pitch. They really sell you on the idea of what it can do. But the problem is did you actually even have the problem to begin with? Did it actually address something you already recognized you needed help with? And so the advice I always give to the firm owners is, first of all, go through a 2-step process. First of all, is this something that you're already experiencing that you would like to spend time and money improving? So is this something that's already in place that can be fixed? The second question is it client facing? Is this, if I actually implement this in my firm, is it going to involve my client in any way? Are they going to have to log in, submit through? Are they going to have to use this at all? Or is it entirely internal? This is something that we're going to use internally for efficiency purposes, and it's not going to impact our clients at all, but it's going to improve what we're doing inside. Asking those 2 questions oftentimes will help us then discern whether or not what we're considering is worth purchasing and using. Because if it's not solving something that we're already experiencing, then it's something new and exciting that maybe I don't need right now. The other is it going to cause me to now give heartburn to my clients because I've chosen to do something that requires them to participate? These are 2 big questions that I have found to be helpful in making that decision of, do I buy into that sales pitch that I just heard or not? Would you add anything more to that?
Squirrel.
Exactly.
Squirrel.
Exactly.
But yes, the idea here is change your client-facing tools very infrequently. In fact, I usually suggest, even though it sounds like an impossibility in technology, when you pick a client-facing tool, assume that you're going to stay on it for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Because your clients don't want to change. That's one. And another very interesting client accounting services practice I was in the last 60 days, the owner manager there said, I don't want to ask my clients to do anything extra. They are hitting the ball over the wall at us. We want to carry that ball. Now, we want to ask for them to do the things they should do, but fundamentally, we don't want them to do extra things that we should be doing. It was really an interesting attitude because it was an improved client service level by doing it that way. So sometimes the internal tools can help you do those things better for your clients, but ease of use, ease of experience for clients. And in fact, the way I've been talking about that for the last 5 or 6 years is client experience. And we have very poor client experience in a lot of our tools today. And even the ones that are new generation, which were referred to as client experience 2.0 or 3.0, are still kind of 1.0 looking. And I'm really looking for client experience 4.0. I want something that's really super easy to use.
I'm so glad you said that. That's very well said. Learn the turnkey process for starting and building a successful accounting business. It's in this course that you'll actually experience 4 specific trainings. Part 1, your business plan, everything you need to know to get started. Part 2, how to price your services, the pros and cons of different methods and the best way to price your services that are both profitable and professional. Marketing and selling your services so that you can actually be top of mind, but more importantly, how to actually be seen as a trusted strategic advisor. And last of all, mapping it all out. 5 principles in running a profitable business so that you can be both competent and confident in the services you're providing. Learn now what it is you can be doing to start and build your own successful accounting, bookkeeping, or tax business. Go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today. All right, here's my last question. What advice would you give to the owner of a bookkeeping, accounting, or tax firm as it relates to leveraging technology in their business?
Pretty straightforward. We're in the zone right now, Roger. Be quite cognizant of your offering. Choose the minimum number of tools to get the job done well, but do spend on technology because it turns out that technology can be a lever for you, and you can be more profitable by spending more on technology rather than less. And the ratios that I've used for quite some time, and I know them to be true based on measurement, if you spend less than 3% of your top line revenue on technology, you're actually making less money than you otherwise would. You can spend over 7% up to about 15% and not have to manage it very carefully, and it'll probably help make you more money. But once you get above 15%, you have to manage it very, very tightly. So 3 to 7% of top line revenue would be a pretty typical technology spend.
Excellent advice. I love it. I did say last question, but I am going to leave with this little insight about you. You mentioned music in your bio. What music do you enjoy listening to and when?
Well, it turns out I actually play bass clarinet and clarinet. And so I'm actually more of a traditional band and I would say military band type of approach. So, but first, I like almost anything that would be considered band orchestra. Of course, I've got a daughter, is a wardrobe manager for The Outsiders on Broadway right now. So think any Broadway musical if I'm listening to something. But I'm very eclectic when it comes to music tastes. So I go all the way across the spectrum, but I tend to like things that, are more melodic, I guess I'll say, and with message behind them. So it probably partially because of age, I'm still an old folk singer. So I was very despondent, with the deaths of Peter, Paul, Mary, we've still got one of the 3 left. But, as I think about a lot of the classic artists, and I've had the privilege on Broadway to meet a number of people, Bob Dylan as an example, or, Cher, just because of my daughter's work in those shows. And so not everybody gets those type of opportunities, but whenever I meet somebody, I usually will listen to their music for some time. So, a lot of people know Emmanuel. Paul Manuel, I'll get his name out, but Lin-Manuel Miranda, I'll get it out. But in any case, so, the Hamilton show, when that was being written, I actually went backstage because the son-in-law built that set on Broadway. And of course, they were writing Moana #1 and singing those things backstage while I was touring. So, that probably is the short answer. Broadway style.
I love it. You also mentioned model trains. What scale do you do?
I'm also eclectic there. So I actually have N, HO, and O, and #1. So I have all 4 gauges for different purposes. But for the grandkids, they can handle the O's a lot better than they can handle the HOs right now. So we tend to do a lot of that. But the Christmas tree gets a #1 around it.
I like it. And travel. Where's your go-to travel?
Oh boy, there I'm pretty eclectic also. I've been fortunate enough to speak in many, many countries around the world. My mom was full Australian, so I have that whole half of the family in Australia. But I tend to like national parks if I'm staying in the United States, and really like a lot of the countries in Europe. Ireland probably is my favorite of those, even though Italy and Greece were quite nice too.
Beautiful.
And frankly, we were talking about Zermatt this week with all the snow across the U.S. because, I've been in Zermatt many times at this time of year to ski.
Yes, very good. Okay. And then regarding the national parks, do you have a favorite?
Glacier.
My brother says the exact same thing. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Randy, this has been a pleasure. It's been an absolute treat. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your expertise. And honestly, I do enjoy your different perspectives on things. So you've been very, very helpful and kind today. So I appreciate it. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to just point out a few offerings as it relates to what Randy has to give us here. There's a few things that you'd want to take advantage of. And then I'm going to do a summary of the call as we've had it. And then I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought. But as to some of the things I'd like to point out, clearly he is a podcaster. So he does have his different podcasts that we want to point out here, one of which is the CPA Practice Advisors podcast. And then with that, we also want to point out he has the NMGI, where you can actually learn more about technology as it relates to accounting firms. And then lastly, K2 Enterprises. So this information is going to be found in the episode description. So if you'd like to know more about these, especially the podcast, go there and definitely subscribe. Listen to those technological insights that come as he actually dives deeper into those various things that we should be considering as we're running our businesses. As it relates to the summary, as a call, one, I appreciate the history. I mean, to go back to the 1970s as a programmer and move and see the evolution of accounting as it related to the 1980s and 90s. Obviously, that transition to paperless, going from basically the old school type of computerized accounting to cloud accounting. These are evolutions that we've all seen and experienced, but to now actually discuss them as we have to see where the future is taking us as AI becomes incorporated into the different platforms, I thought was a healthy discussion. Now, as it actually turns out, he did a great job of explaining that we need to begin our firms by, first of all, understanding what services we're trying to offer as it relates to tech stacks, that's going to be the guiding forces to knowing what are we offering our clients, to know of the 23 different areas of business, what tools do we need to be utilizing as we focus on them. And I liked how he simplified it by saying, just like the baking industry, we need three core things that we can actually offer as services to our clients to help retain them so that they have that stickiness component. And one of the things that I thought was helpful was the 3 core services that I was able to mention as it relates to bookkeeping, accounting, tax planning and preparation, as well as CFO and advisory. But we went even deeper as it related to advisory work, what that really is. And we talked about the CAS type philosophy as it relates to accounting services, how advisory is something that we need to be utilizing, and talked about some different tech services that we could utilize there. And in doing in using those services, actually become more impactful with our clients, especially at that advisory level. We also defined controller or accountant being that past analysis, where we were then taking the advisor to be the more forward-thinking advisor advisory and business model type influence. These are all things that I thought were very helpful as a part of the conversation today. And then as it related to technology, there are things on the horizon. There are things coming that we need to be aware of. But if we're just conscientious of, we don't need to be gravitated to those shiny objects, the things that are sold so well, pitched so well. We need to stand back and have less being more. We need to recognize that we need to really leverage the tools that we're already using to their fullest capacity. We're already paying for them. Let's go deep into those things that we're already using for our clients, become more efficient within our firms as we're using them. And then as we're evaluating new tools, basically do this assessment of, does it address a problem we already have? Is it something that actually is client facing where we're going to actually involve our clients in them, or is it entirely internal that we're using for efficiency purposes? And Randy's great advice, if we adopt something in our firm that especially involves our clients, definitely commit to it for at least 4 to 5 years before now asking them to learn something new or change with us. So excellent conversation about so many things. And then especially the personal side of things, the music, the travel, the national parks, the train scales, those are quite enjoyable as well. So Randy, a very in-depth conversation. Thank you for all this. Do you have a parting thought?
Well, Roger, I appreciate the invitation in today. And, one we didn't get to was the reason I'm staying with this is I want to see AI running on quantum. I am so excited about the future possibility and probability. It's not an if, now it's a matter of when. But that parting thought would be very client-centric in everything you do. But where I always used to put client first, I now actually put team first, because it's hard to find the right talent. And your team will actually enable you to deliver the right client-facing services. So that's a flip that I've done. But now once you know what it is you're trying to deliver, then pick a horse, pick a platform, and stay with it, because there's going to be all sorts of opportunities. But it's a little bit of a leapfrog game. It always has been. Somebody will be in the lead now, but somebody else will be in the lead a little bit later. And, it's only when you have a real reason you have to leave that you need to change. So probably the parting thought is really this simple. Accountants change these type of platforms as often as they change physicians and major world religions. And unless you're going to change one of those anytime soon, you may not need to change your platform just to stay up with the times. So again, a pleasure to be with all of you today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Randy, you're amazing. I appreciate it. As for my listeners, if you haven't already subscribed, I invite you to subscribe to the podcast. Love to have you as a regular listener. Each and every Wednesday, we release a new episode, having an expert, a guest on the show to share insights that you need to be aware of. So subscribe, set your reminders, and get those notifications. As it relates to the podcast, I also want to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com. We have there in the navigation a podcast section devoted to actually collecting these various episodes that we've had, the highlights, if you will, and put them into playlists that you can go binge listen to, whether it is tech stacks, pricing, mental health, a variety of topics that you can dive deep into based on your current situation and needs. I also want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here that at GrowCon, we invite the experts to come and share with us the insights, just like Randy has, where we're able to stay top of our game and, more importantly, stay focused on working on our business. It's here at the show that you're able to hear from the experts, but also visit with peers, make new connections, build new friendships, hear what it is they're doing in their businesses, perhaps even collaborate to better service your clients. And then lastly, meet my staff, those individuals here at Universal Accounting Center that are committed to your success so you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. So I invite you, if you haven't already, go to universalaccounting.com and get your ticket today for GrowCon. And I look forward to seeing you there. As it relates to these other accounting principles, things that you can be doing to build the premier accounting firm in your area, whether it's training for you, training for your staff, check out Universal Accounting. Go to universalaccountingschool.com. There you'll find the various courses, curriculums, things available to assist you in offering quality accounting services. Why? Because accounting success is universal. And with all that, let me invite you to also give us a phone call. Love to speak with you, find out about your current situation, and see what we can do to maybe point you in the right direction so that you can, in fact, be proud of the business that you're operating, the services that you're providing, and best service your clients. So how you do that? Call 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and be safe out there.